Conversations with me, Sharmaine Denise. And I am a spiritual life coach, and I help women and queer folks reclaim their voice, self-confidence, and self-worth by reconnecting to their spiritual and divine selves. So that's what I do as a life coach. And here on Queer Conversations, my aim with starting this is to create a safe space and foster a dialogue around the connection between spirituality and sexuality. So we're going to be sharing some stories about our spiritual journeys and how they correlate with our sexual identities and gender expression. So my hope is to create a judgment-free space, an open and honest dialogue, and where we're just free to share and listen with empathy and love and curiosity. So today I have Sam and Aussie. Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you both for being here today. I'm so excited to just chat with you guys. And we actually met virtually. We virtually met. And yeah, right, yeah. We were connected through a lesbian meetup group. So, and we did daily happy hours and got to know each other and chatted and dance parties and all of game nights, everything.
Yes.
So late night conversation. So really got to know both of you pretty well. So yeah. I am very thankful to have you both here today. So we're just going to jump right in, and I always like to start off with how you identify yourself on this beautiful rainbow spectrum and your preferred pronouns. So I get that all clear right off the bat.
Yeah, so I guess for both of us, it's not so clear cut, but I do go by she, her, hers. And I considered myself straight for probably the first 20-something years of my life. But then we were laughing because we talked about this a lot, but when I think back on it, I mean, there were so many reasons why I should have known since like kindergarten. And I'm sure that happens to a lot of us, and I just didn't know what it was at the time. And then I identified as bisexual for probably 4 to 6 years, something like that. It's kind of fuzzy in the middle.
Yeah.
But then as of probably 2 to 3 years ago, I've identified as lesbian. So it's kind of shifted in chunks throughout my life.
Yes. And I can relate to that, so I understand. So thank you, Sam. And Aussie?
And for me, I'm still currently, it's been renewed, like a curiosity with, non-binary being in the media, especially with meeting Sam and some other people, and just that term being around. I don't know yet, and I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
Growing up, it was just, one of two things, you're a lesbian, or straight. So I hadn't thought about anything else, and I'm curious. I'm diving into it and educating myself. So,
okay.
But I do go by she and her right now, and lesbian.
Nice. Okay. Thank you for sharing. And that's so great that we kind of talked about that, because it's a spectrum and it's a journey, and we give ourselves space to really explore that. So kudos to you, and we'll see where the journey takes you. So.
I'm excited. It's an evolutionary process, right?
It is. Yeah. So speaking of evolutionary process, yes. So when did you officially come out, start identifying it? Well, I'll start with you, Sam, since you mentioned that you first came out as bisexual. So when did that first start or happen for you?
So I think everything's a little bit just fuzzy. I don't know exactly when everything exactly happened, but I know I would, notice things as I was growing up. I just didn't really have words for it. I didn't know any lesbians or anybody other than maybe knowing a couple of gay people, but they weren't really close to myself.
Right.
So I think it was more when I entered college
Mhm.
that I started to have a lot of friends in my circle who identified as, you know, a variety of different things. And so through having conversations with them and, you know, going out to WeHo for the first
Oh
time
yeah.
and you know, dancing. But at that time, I was still kind of pegged as the straight girl. So it was still not really the same. And, you know, even now, even with my rainbow shirt, like I still look pretty straight
Yeah.
to anyone who sees me, right?
Right.
So
Whatever that means.
yeah, like they
Right.
always just assume like, oh, you have a boyfriend, or you know,
Right.
and they just say it or they ask, and it's always just an assumption.
Right.
And so it was when I was actually in a 10-year relationship with a guy since high school that towards the tail end of it, when I was in college, I started to kind of explore and think a little bit more about it. Like,
Mhm.
oh, maybe when I thought all of those like ads in the magazine, the like maybe I didn't just love their outfits and their jewelry.
Right.
But maybe I just like the women in it. I don't know.
Right.
Started to like, you know, process things.
Yeah. That's so funny. For me, it was the L word, to be quite frank.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. That was a thing. I was like,
Yeah.
what's happening? Oh.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, and just not
I-
knowing it's not normal for like all of your friends too. They don't think the same things,
Right.
right?
Right. It's
Yeah.
definitely, it can definitely feel very scary, especially in the beginning stages where it's like, I'm having all these feelings, I'm having all these emotions, like I'm finding this attraction that I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, maybe that was there when I was younger and I totally suppressed it.
Yeah.
And, you know, now it's like, it's bubbling up, it's resurfacing. What do I do? And who do I
Mhm.
talk to? Who do I talk
Right.
to? Especially if
Right.
you're not surrounded by, you know,
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what happened.
yeah.
And so it was kind of during that period in my mid 20s that I really identified as bisexual. And, you know, I started going to Pride and things like that and watching YouTube videos and hearing other people's experiences. And then after I had my first girlfriend, and that lasted, you know, 4 years, that's when I eventually was able to kind of like come out over time, but it was never a clear cut thing for most
Right.
people. Although I did sit my parents down while they were watching TV, and I was like, I have something to tell you.
That is very interesting, and we'll definitely talk about the family and
Yeah.
parents because that is also another part of the process, right? So
Yeah, and my first girlfriend wasn't out either. So it
okay.
wasn't on social media. It wasn't anywhere. So even during that whole 4 years, people had no idea. It was just
Wow.
completely hidden because I didn't want to out her unintentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So professionally and everything, only the close people to me knew. But
Right.
you know, after meeting Aussie,
Oh yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you know, I'd
I'm
always,
outing her already by
yeah.
Right.
Like I'd always wanted to be a part of the communities, but I just couldn't. And so,
Right.
you know, both of us coming together, I was like, okay, now I get to be me, like to everybody. So
Yes, that is beautiful. Oh, and we will talk about you too. Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm so excited to hear how all of that unfolded. But I want to, Aussie, I want to give you your turn and ask you, you know,
When did I?
yes.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think there's a process where you come out to yourself. And for me, even though as young as I want to say 4 or 5, I had, you know, dreams and where I was a man, and you know, not that I knew what sex was.
Right,
Uh,
right.
it, it it's, you know, looking back, I'm like, wow, I was gay, but I just suppressed it. I was raised Catholic. My family is quite homophobic, and Asian culture, you know, there's no acceptance of that. So I just stuffed everything. So I would say 18, I want to say, which is my first year of university.
Mhm.
And my best friend told me she had feelings for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I like you too. You know, I love you, man.
Right.
And then she's like, And I'm like, oh. And that's when I explored what that meant. Even though I had feelings before that I didn't recognize, I just stuffed away. That's when I really like looked inward and I processed it. And it took a while in terms of getting comfortable in my own skin. But and it wasn't an easy transition out to my family, especially my dad. It was actually one of the reasons why I moved out of home at 19. We had a huge fight, and over, and it wasn't me coming out. It was just him accusing me. Well, at the time, I thought of his accusation of me being a lesbian, and I was like, no, and I was so angry. But we had a physical altercation, and I was just like, no, I'm out of here. And so I moved out. But that's when I went on this journey of, really being who I am, and I had been somebody else that whole other time, just trying to appease and all of that.
Right.
And yes, it was a rebellious period, and also a very self-destructive period. But it was a process I don't regret, and it's something I had to go through to be who I am today. And there's no regrets, but it wasn't an easy process at all. So, but my family, I mean, I am, my first live-in girlfriend that I had, we went on a family holiday to my family's home country. And so it was definitely, it was right. And this is where I saw my mom accepting me, and she did things in her own way to show her acceptance of us. So that showed me that.
How long ago was that? So you moved out 19 after the altercation with your dad, and so what was that time frame?
I want to say it was very much close to graduating from university. It was after graduation from university. So like, oh gosh, maybe like 6 years, 6 years.
Wow.
We went on a family trip. But my dad still wasn't accepting of us, and he would openly, it was just really embarrassing. I stood up for my girlfriend at the time, just was disrespecting her and just saying, oh, so when are you going to get a boyfriend, and I'm just like, this is my girlfriend here that's sitting right next to me, and you are just saying. And so we had a big altercation about that, and it was, it wasn't fun with my dad, but my mom, she did her best to give us privacy, and and that's when I saw like the acceptance, level.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That is one of the most challenging parts too. It's like, just like you said, coming out and admitting it to yourself, and then stepping into who you are, and basically, showing the world, right? Showing the people closest to you. And there's always that fear in the back of your head, like, okay, like, obviously my parents, you guys know me, obviously you created me, so you just never know, like, how deep is that unconditional love that you're gonna have for me when I tell you this? How is it gonna look? So
and the thing is that there is no I don't have any anger. I mean, yes, there's forgiveness work that I'm doing with my dad, but I get that parents have to also grieve the person they thought I would be, because they have this story in their head about their child, and I am saying, no, that's not who I am. And so they have to a time to process that themselves and grieve that person, and then they can accept me for who I'm saying I am. So I get that process, and my parents aren't very, Asian, very traditional Asian cultural parents. They don't talk about the feelings. We don't have chats about, hey, how you feeling? Are you doing okay? Nothing like that. So I just had to figure it out, and I'm glad that I stood up and I, went through all of that, because it really made me more compassionate, even for people who don't accept us,
right?
Because there is it's not easy. They are going through their own process, and it's nothing against them. But I'm gonna be who I am, though.
Yes, as you should.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that. And that's amazing that you said it has made you more compassionate. It has made you more compassionate. And that that is hard. That is hard, especially when people just don't understand, they refuse to understand, and they refuse to listen, and they refuse to just meet you where you are. So that in itself is a challenge. But compassion, compassion, compassion. You know, everyone is walking their own path. So, and that is the truth.
Yes, amen.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were raised Catholic, Aussie.
Yeah.
Sam, were you raised in any type of spiritual religious tradition at all?
Not directly. My mom's whole side of the family is very Catholic, and so she and all of my aunts and uncles went to Catholic school growing up.
Yeah.
But as far as going to church or anything, we would really only just go for mass or for like weddings or funerals or something like that. But the extended side of her family, very, very like every Sunday, you know, always there. They're the ones participating, and they were like the family of that church down in LA. And so we were almost kind of just like the outcasts or the yeah, because everyone like under my grandpa, like we were all just our own, you know, none of my cousins really grew up, my first cousins really grew up religious, even though all of our parents did. And then on my dad's side, my dad's not religious at all, but his mom, so my grandma, was Presbyterian Christian. So even for preschool, I went to a Christian school for that 1 year. And then other than that, it's just free.
Yeah. Did you have any inkling or any personal beliefs on your own growing up, or that you came into, or?
You know, I think I did to an extent, because my aunties are actually, and even my mom to an extent, are pretty spiritual. They don't necessarily practice it a lot, but you know, they believe it. Like my aunt they see psychics every once in a while, and so, you know, we would kind of have those talks. And even my youngest aunt, who is more of like the rebellious one, she has her beliefs, but she's also not afraid to ask the questions. So I remember we would, you know, be helping at the church administration to send out letters and stuff, and she would be, you know, asking them questions. You know, she wasn't afraid to. So I think I also had that, where, you know, even though you have this belief and you grew up this way, you don't, like, you can't be afraid to still ask questions, because if it doesn't make sense to you, then how strong is that belief that you really have?
Correct.
So I was grateful to have that, and the ability to kind of form my own opinions on things, and not be persuaded one way or the other. So that I've been grateful for.
Wow. And Aussie, as far as being raised in a Catholic home, in the Catholic tradition, where did you fall, like, growing up with that, and kind of where are you at now with that?
That's and I like talking about this, because growing up, it was, you know, Sunday school, very strict, Catholic, all of the teachings and stuff. And it wasn't until I was 15 or so when I questioned things, because, you know, the priest would be up there lecturing us on something, and it would be very hypocritical to something else that he just said earlier. And so I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't add up. What do you mean? And then, you know, so when I started looking into things like, you know, for example, you know, pro-choice, and it was just certain things that I just didn't align with. And I started questioning, and that's when I started to go away from the church, and I actually turned away from God. And I use the word God because that's what I grew up with, and you know, it's universe, source, whatever you want to call it. But I turned away from it. I was just so angry, especially with going through the hardship with my, you know, accepting from my parents and all of that stuff. So I really turned it. I even the word God gave, like, it. So I'll just give you a context. So from high school, you know, I turned away from God, and then I'm gay and all of that. I'm trying to be, you know, trying to find myself and all of that. And I was seeing a therapist for, you know, my first, my relationship, actually, my girlfriend that I met here. And she gave me some audiobooks to listen to while I was going to go home to renew my visa. And and she had the foresight to give me these because I was gonna be under my parents' roof for the first time since I moved out. So when I went home, you know, on the bus ride to the city or whatever, I was there for 3 months, not working, you know, just kind of hanging out until my visa was like, so listen to it. And 10 minutes into this audiobook, and if you guys ever come, he was my first teacher, Dr. Wayne Dyer. He's like the gateway to spirituality, you know. So and yes, so the book was named Inspiration, and I was listening to it, and the 10 minutes in, I heard the word God. He mentioned God, and I just was like, what the fuck? And I turned it off. I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to believe it.
I believe it. It's fine.
Okay.
Speak your mind.
I'll get that out.
Speak your mind.
And I was just like, what is she giving me to listen to? What is this brainwashing bullshit, right? So I turned it off. But I had this is the thing that really set me on my path is a couple of days after that, I had a chat with my mom about my dad, and my mom and dad don't have a very good relationship, and she's usually just venting about him. And so, but this was the first time that she was venting, you know, one-on-one with me, face to face, like complaining and stuff. And I, you know, just listened like I do. Then the next morning, and I don't have work, so usually my routine was next morning I get up and I go to the gym, and I, you know, come home and have lunch, and I go to yoga later in the afternoon. I was like, great life. But next morning I was just like feeling funk, like I was in a funk, and I was like, oh, you know, I'm gonna go work out. I'm gonna shake this off. I go work out, come home, and I'm eating lunch, and I'm like, oh, I feel really crappy still, you know. I'm like, I don't know what this is. And so I go and take a nap. I'm like, I'm just gonna nap it off, go take a nap, and I go to my childhood bedroom, and I start to like lay down, and I'm like trying to sleep, and the next thing I know, I just start bawling my eyes out.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, I have no idea where this is coming from. I just this pit of despair feeling. And then I heard inaudibly, you know, 3 times, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. And as soon as I just, you know, they heard those words, and that just everything just from despair to like infinite love and peace, it just flooded through me. And I was just like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
What was that? And and that was the moment that I went on my journey to just like, what is God? Like, that's, you know, I had so many questions, and I was just hungry for answers, and I just read every book I could lay my hands on, you know. And I definitely finished. I turned back on that audiobook, and I was like, and it is definitely one of my favorite books. So
that's so funny. Like, let me holler at Wayne real quick.
Yeah. Check it out one more time.
That is powerful. When you said that, I got chills all over, because I mean, when we're not looking for a sign, they come when we're, and you know, they just like lightning. It just kind of just comes, and it just overtakes you. It's funny that you say that, because it actually reminded me, I'm so sorry, but it reminded me of a dream I had last week. I actually was supposed to be somewhere. I overslept. I slept for like 13 hours. Okay. I was that deep in my like dream coma. Okay. And I don't like, there was some family gathering. There were so many people there, but like, it wasn't just families, like friends, crazy. It's just people I met in all walks of my life just was all there. And everyone was like fighting. And I'm just like, what? Like, what's going on? And I think we were getting ready for Thanksgiving, because it was a big table, a lot of food, whatever. And everyone's fighting. I remember I just banged my hands on the table. I was like, I got something to say. And all of a sudden, I just felt like this warmth come over me. And all I said was, God loves you no matter what. And then I woke up. And then I woke up. And I was like, 13 hours in the real world went by. Like, what is this? But it's crazy when these like downloads happen. It's so clear. It is so clear. And you can't ignore it. You cannot ignore it. So that is powerful. That is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really needed that. It was like a wake up call, you know, in hindsight. And I was already on a path to that, but it just was like jolted me out to being awake, you know?
Yeah. That is amazing. That is amazing. And so what are your beliefs and values right now? So I'll start with you, Aussie, and then we'll go to Sam. So where are you guys at as far as
so
your awakening journey?
Yeah. So you know how I was like, oh, God's bullshit.
Yeah.
Into then down because it was this concept of God that I was, you know, sold on, which was this judging God, like with a beard and like, oh, you go to hell if you do this, you can't do that.
Right.
And it was totally not that. I mean, not for me at least. Okay, you can believe whatever you want, but for myself, and everyone has their own experience of God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it. But I realized that relationship with God is what you make of it, and it's your life. It's a reflection of your life experience. And so everything I went through, and every like joy, every sadness, everything meant something, you know, and that was my relationship with God. And God is everywhere, and I'm only using the word God because it's what I associate with how to be growing up Catholic, but it's in everything. And so I believe in God. I love God. I cherish God. I'm a servant of God. It really is a personal definition of what you want to make it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. And what about for you, Sam? Where are you at as far as your spiritual development and journey? Especially since you know, being raised the way you were and able to kind of explore and free think.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation we have all the time because it was just so different in every way. And I remember when we would first kind of start talking about this, I was really into like doing YouTube tarot readings. And like I even have this like my journal right here. And I one side I write when I have dreams and I wake up and I journal my dreams. And then the other side I started writing down my tarot readings that were on YouTube. And so this is almost just like my journal, and I just have like all these things. I think the earliest one was from like 2014.
Oh wow.
So it's like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's kind of when we started talking about that sort of stuff. Is just, hey, let's watch some tarot readings together. And I would just share my screen on Zoom, and I'd be like, pick a card, and then I'll pick a card. And then we would just start listening to them, and our faces would just be like, how is this real? Like explaining things in our lives,
going on
like,
in my life. Yeah. You know, I had never tried it, and I was
and then from there we would just like have these intense, like crazy conversations, and I would tell her about my experiences, and she'd be like, oh, and then she'd like give the textbook definition of what I was going through, and I was like, oh, this is a thing? I just thought I went through it. Like, this would happen all the time, and we're just like So you like understand everything like conceptually, but haven't necessarily experienced a lot of them. And I was having a lot of these experiences, but I didn't know that there was like a textbook definition for it.
Yeah.
And so we would just have these conversations of like, oh, I went through this. Like, what does that mean? And she'd be like, oh, that's what that is.
Oh,
Yeah. It was, yeah.
So I feel like even spirituality for me is just very loose because I still don't even understand like some of the experiences I've had.
yeah.
And that it's like a thing in the spiritual world or like, you know, those who follow the teachings.
Yeah.
No
Do you
idea.
want to share one of your experiences with all of
I
us?
mean, I guess.
If you want to.
Yeah,
But
you know, I think one of the most common ones is that I think I've always just been able to get into a meditative state pretty easily compared to most people, I guess, just quieting the mind and being able to just take myself out and just like I used to just call it zone out, you know. I had no idea. I just
do you mean meditation? No, I mean zoning out. Like
Yeah.
zoning out, okay? Let's zone out together, okay? Like, no, I'm not. I promise I'm not making fun of you. I'm not.
No, it really is.
It
though.
really is that.
Like I distinctly remember going on a trip one time with like I think my sister and her boyfriend were in the car and I was just watching things pass through the window looking out the car and I just like went into that zone
Yeah.
and they were trying to talk to me and we were all like just in like a small car. It wasn't like I was in the back seat and they were in the front of the van and they were yelling my name and I did not hear them, but I was fully awake. My eyes were open and everything and I was just staring at I don't know what and they were all yelling at me. I had no idea and they're like, did you really not hear us? And I was like, no. I had no idea.
Wow, that's deep. That is deep.
Yeah.
So that's also an amazing gift. Like it really is because I will say I really got more into meditation over the last couple of years. Like I've done it off and on, like with Deepak Chopra 21-day challenge.
Oh yes.
But you know, I
Love it.
was never really consistent with it. And the biggest thing is, you know, quieting my mind. Like I suffer from anxiety and then some depression too, and just everything. And then like I'm a perfectionist, so it's just like there's so much going on up here. So that's always been my challenge is to like stay in the present moment because this moment is what matters, right? So that is a true gift.
So this is what I tell her all the time. I tell her like, do you know how much money people pay for to learn how to do this that you're doing like just because that's the way I am. I'm like, damn, you're manifesting like people pay lots of money for this, you know? So yeah.
And I mean, I think it was even when we were talking about just like my professional path, like that I've been on, where, you know, I was just like in this job and I was miserable and I just was like, oh, I'm gonna quit in like 4 or 5 months because this and that. But then something happened at work and I quit like 2 days later and I put in my 2 weeks notice, but I had no plan. I didn't have a job lined up. I had like nothing. All I knew was that I was just saving money so that I could like survive and pay rent. So I was going to be okay, even though I had no plan. And it's just like, I went from there to like not working for like 7 months. And then I just worked part-time for 2 entire years. And I was like, oh yeah, this is my break. And then I just like, and I think I just like, she tells me this all the time. She's like, you know, what you're doing is you're just following like your intuition and you're being guided. And my whole life I was just like, oh, I just thought I was just going for like what I wanted to do and not caring what anybody said about it. But I think like without knowing it at the time, I was just, you know, receiving messages of like where to go and what path to go down. And for some reason I was just able to hear it and listen and just do it, even though it was like, you know, my
Unconventional.
brain would want to be like, what are you doing? Like, you
Right,
have
right,
no idea
right.
what you're doing. And I think, like,
Unconventional.
yeah, very unconventional. And for me, like, my spiritual journey has also been just like literally having my spiritual dictionary explain everything to me.
Shut up.
Right.
Like,
Page 79. We got it. But that, what a beautiful balance, though. What a beautiful
Exactly. The balance is crazy. Charmaine, I have to say, I don't know. I learned about twin flames because of our union, and I'm just mind blowing stuff has been happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, there is definitely like we were brought together, and we're so alike yet so different, but it works. I don't know.
Yeah. You
It's
know,
like
okay.
unloading.
I'm so glad we're talking about this, honey. Okay. Okay, because when we were doing those Zoom calls, okay. Okay, did you guys know each other before the meetup group and like COVID and the daily happy hours? So you did it. Okay. Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah,
Freaking beautiful. So obviously getting together with your chats about the tarot and Aussie being the spiritual dictionary, page 68, this is what this is. So when did this start? I am like so curious.
So it's a long story, but I'll try to, summarize it as much as possible. But when I first joined, I was actually still with my ex at the time.
Okay.
And the reason for joining the group was because of the whole thing about, her not being out. And I was just lacking that sense of community. And the people around me were just, all of my friends, they're almost all just straight couples. And, I just felt like I was missing a part of myself, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. And even it doesn't even have to be like in a more like deep just I wanted to just have that sense of community of like-minded women, people going through similar experiences, and just sharing. And so that was my intention of joining. And living with, at the time, an essential worker. So my sister's fiance was a nurse, and he would sometimes be around the COVID patients. So I was quarantining not just at home, but almost entirely from my bedroom for like the first 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we just met, but it was all just completely platonic, like just friends getting to know each other naturally, like on Zoom.
Yeah.
And there was one night that I remember we were, and I don't think you were there, but there were like a dozen women, and it was one of those late night talks, and we were just sharing stories. And one of the women shared a story about being in a relationship for 10 years. And it was something where they weren't meant to be together. It was like it got into a toxic relationship. And it was in that moment and through that story that, it finally occurred to me, and I had that light bulb moment of, man, I'm already 4 years in, and I've been feeling kind of stuck and not knowing how to get myself out of this relationship where we were great as friends, but together we weren't a match. And it was in that moment that I was like, I don't want to go from 4 years and then find myself 10 years down the line and wasting all this time when I knew all the way back then that it wasn't something that, was meant to be. And again, it was another one of those, I guess you can call it like a received message, that I was on another Zoom meeting sometime in the future. I don't know how much time passed. And my ex had called me, and I just had that impulse of like, now is when you need to do it. And I did it. And it just kind of like, I just did it. And I was freed. And because of COVID, there was no like, oh, I want to meet, like, let's talk, let's do this and that. It was like, we can't.
Yeah.
You know, it's COVID. So it's like everything happened exactly how it was supposed to happen.
Right.
And with the exact timing it was supposed to happen. And from there, like, you know, we just were talking. There was nothing like we didn't even know anything about, like, I had no idea like that she could have been interested or anything. Like, I had no idea. And
But
then,
I was.
but
Right. And she's like,
but
yeah.
the thing was, I knew that she was already with someone, so I'm like, no, you know, like, and
Right.
I'm not like that. So yeah,
You're right. Right.
it just happened.
you can tell that part.
Yeah. The the
From when I joined, maybe.
oh really?
The
From that?
I mean, just briefly.
Oh wow.
Right? Because
I mean, like, okay, I'm single. I'm not looking. I am not looking.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it was actually Sharmaine, I was actually going through some tough times as well. I lost my grandmother in last year in November,
Yeah.
and she was like a mother figure to me.
Yeah.
So I was having a really hard time, and then COVID happened,
Yeah.
and I was living out here by myself with a new job, and I just really didn't want to go deep into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just proactively searching for connection online,
Right.
so that I don't get myself into more of a, you know, down the rabbit hole. So that's why I looked stuff up, and that's when I saw that, oh, this group, which I was a part of, because I used to live in Orange County and I used to attend a couple of times. I've been to a couple of their events, and they were very active. So I was like, oh, they have a thing every day. So I'm going to actively pursue that and just keep, you know, I want to connect and because I'm an extrovert and I want to just stay in it, and I'm going through some stuff, so I need to have people around me.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and it was just an amazing community that I connected with, and amazing people like you that I met.
Yeah.
Just amazing conversations we're having, right? It was just the timing, and I don't know, I feel like my prayers were answered or something, because everything just went from, like, you know, dark to light. And I really, really believe it just dropped out of nowhere. You know, she came into my life. We just connected. It was, you know, something that I had said, you know, I never was trying to get in the way of anything. And I really, you know, don't want to feel or don't want anyone to be hurt. And she said, you know what, I was, if I can say this, she said I was already out, you know, 2 years into the 4 year. I wasn't looking for anything either, but it's just, I don't know. You know, the first time I really had a one-on-one with her, it's funny, and this is, you know, we're both single at the time, and it was funny because people always say, you know, when you know, right? You meet that person, you know when you know, and I'm like, bullshit. What do you mean by that? You know, I don't know. That thing is, I'm not sure. Like, what do you mean you know? Like, you look across the room, you see her, you know. I'm like, what the fuck is that about? Right?
Like, is there a tag on it? Like,
what? What is this bullshit? Right? So I want proof.
I understand that it hasn't happened for me, but I understand. I've heard.
Right? But it happened to me.
Yeah.
And it was I never felt like that, where it was this safe place. It was this like, it's crazy. Like, we talk about it all the time, and I got up from that one-on-one conversations. I was actually asking for help, like just advice on something that I was having difficulty with somebody, one of my friends, and just a platonic, casual conversation. But I got up from the conversation. I was like, am I going to marry her? That thought came, and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why are you so crazy? You're fucking crazy right now. Like, what the heck is shit? I had to stop myself. I was like, stop. It is amazing.
It felt right. It felt right.
It did. Right. Yeah. And I can tell you the first, you know, because it was during COVID.
Right.
So the first time we were going to meet was when the the parks first opened
Mhm.
and all of that. So we're both very careful about COVID and social distancing and all of that. But I remember the first time was our first physical date we went on, and I was holding her, and I remember I swear, Sharmaine, it felt, okay, it was just like like when everything makes sense, like all the stars aligned and everything that you lived, it was like a pause in the moment of time, and it was like everything makes sense. Oh my
Man.
God. Oh my God. It was surreal.
Wow.
Yeah. Utterly
First of all,
unexplainable.
I'm so happy for the both of you. Like, I'm just like, so great. Because
It's blowing our minds too.
yeah, no, it's so beautiful because it's like, I mean, I know there's a few other people that, you know, love in the time of COVID,
Yeah.
which is it's fantastic. I mean, I think that's absolutely great. And when I saw, I think Sam, you had posted something in the meetup group to do the survey and everything. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do the survey. And it's like, oh, Instagram. I was like, okay. I was like, Saussie. It's like, what is this? Oh, okay. I was like, okay, I need to get the lowdown. Clearly, I've been off these calls for a while, so I'm like, I'm out of the loop, honey. But I love it. I love it. You, both of you, I love you both. You guys are beautiful, and I just love it. So I thank you for sharing your get together story, because that's just, I personally was curious, and now we've shared it with the world. So this is great. But I want to also ask, because when we're talking about our sexual identities, our gender expressions, and we're talking about spirituality, do you think that there is a link between the two? Do you think that one influences the other? Do you think they go hand in hand? What do you believe? What do you feel? What has your journey taught you?
I love this question, Sharmaine. I love this. This was a question that I really had trouble grasping because my mind is so lateral, like literal. But absolutely, there's a connection, not in a literal sense, but in terms of like, it's a spectrum, right? Sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So is spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And the common thing is that, and everyone as an individual has their own journey, whether it's sexual or spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a snowflake, you know, like it's just their own little unique thing, you know, and they add to the beauty of the world. So yeah, that's my conversion of that question.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? What do you think? How does all that fit for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely connected, but just not in a direct sense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when we're talking about spirituality, we tend to kind of focus in more on like our soul or what's inside, and not necessarily, you know, who we are in a biological sense or in the physical world. And I think that's one of the things where they kind of enhance each other, but it's kind of always going back and forth. It's not necessarily like, you know, because you're a spiritual person, then you're more open to your sexuality, or the other way around. And some of the things that I've kind of learned more about, like when you talk about like divine masculine and feminine and the different energies and things like that, I mean, spirituality, it's all about like, you don't necessarily have to just be one or the other. You can have a blend of both. And I think that, you know, sometimes the idea of sexuality, you know, puts us all in this like, oh, I have to define everything. And you know, just kind of like thinking of it in a spiritual sense allows you to have that freedom of like, you know, I feel like I'm very feminine on the outside, but I also feel, you know, a blend of maybe half and half on the inside. And you know, but you're not having to define yourself in any way. It's just, this is who I am. And I think it also looking back when I was kind of figuring out in that phase of like how do I feel, what is like being part of the LGBTQ plus community, like where do I fit in that? At one point, you know, I actually thought, am I like pansexual? Do I just love everyone regardless? Because I always feel like I see people like on the inside, and you know, somebody can be presenting themselves as a very charitable and giving and loving person, but I almost feel like I have this like extra ability to like read between the lines and be like, I really feel like that person's not doing it in a genuine way. Like it's not because they actually care about this cause, but they, you know, want the I don't know, status, of like what they're doing. And then I can see when maybe someone is acting out in a negative way and maybe they're being mean to people or they're not being very positive, but then, you know, on the inside it's like, you know, that they're genuinely a good person. So I feel like all of that kind of just like plays back and forth. You just have to have a certain level of compassion and openness, and be willing to listen to people, to just understand, like as Aussie said, everyone is their own individual person, but like if you only see the world in two different, you know, you're never going to be able to really accept and understand like who the other person is. Sounds like
I feel like when we do that, when we keep things in this like duality mode, we miss all the beauty that's in between and all around, right? We miss the mark when we do that. And
that's sin. That's the definition of sin, missing the mark.
Oh, you're good. I was gonna say, so it's so interesting. I love posing these questions to people because obviously the answers always vary, you know, and you're the first person to bring up like the divine masculine, the divine feminine. Like that's just, it's there's so much, and you're right. When we talk about spirituality, we're talking about our core, we're talking about our essence, we're talking about our soul. And for me, I believe there's a direct link personally because of things that have happened in my life. I literally would not be here if it wasn't for my faith in God. And I was raised in a very traditional Christian household. Let me just share a little bit.
I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it.
Very, very Christian household. I went to all of my education has been in a private school. So I went to a Lutheran preschool, elementary, middle school. I went to a Catholic high school, and I went to a Jesuit university, and then my degree's in theology and religious studies. So there's things that I've experienced in my personal life, and obviously things that I've studied, and I can, you know, read a book and tell you what page to. No.
More than I can, I promise.
No, but also, you know, I've always had that inquisitiveness. I've always had that, well, I just want to ask this question, but I've always been in the traditional school sense. I was taught never to really ask those questions, right? So in the privacy of my home, like in my journal, like I would ask these questions, right? And I'm like, okay. And I knew that I was different. When I was different when I was 7. I knew that. Yeah. But I also knew that different was also like a sin, right? Like that's like me being a lesbian was not right. That's what I was taught, and that's how I felt. So growing up from 7 all the way on, I came out at 21. I definitely hid it and I acted out. I'm not gonna even like try to front like I wore so many different masks like to appease everyone. Like he's a good student from my mom. Like let me be the, you know, good family member and support, you know, just so many different things. And then in school, get good grades and play sports and just be quiet and be, you know, attend church and do everything that is expected of you. And on the inside, I was dying. I was dying. I hated myself. I just a whole lot of shame, just everything. Anyway, so I always believed in God. That's one thing that being put in the church, I had a very, very firm belief in God. Like God had a direct hand in my life. And I know that for a fact. And all I can do is just tell you how it felt. It's very hard to kind of put in words. I just feel it. I feel it to this day. I've always felt my path being guided. Always. No matter what anybody told me, what was preached at me. And I just want to be clear, this is not an attack on the church. I'm not attacking the church. It's not even about that. It's not even about religion. It's not even about that.
No.
But I will say that foundation was that introduction to my higher power and eventually leading me to my higher self. And that has always been at the core of who I am. So for me, coming out, it was divinely inspired, to be quite frank. Like, so the whole
Tell us
journey,
the story. You coming out.
I mean, it was, nothing wild. I mean, I came out my senior year in college. Actually, I was very active in college. I was like on student council. I was in every club. Like I was very, very busy. Like, and I had like 4 jobs, 18 years. Like I was crazy. Okay, I was doing everything. I was doing everything. Okay. So
you were perfect.
So I was actually so I was already having like some stirring. So my close friends, who I call my sisters, we would have various conversations. I'm like, yeah, feeling a little gay. Okay, it wasn't like that, but it was more of a, like I'm feeling this attraction. But I felt, we had this bond, we had a connection. I knew I can go to them with basically anything, and they're gonna love and embrace me. So they were the first 2 people that I was talking to about this feeling, this thing that I've been trying to hide since I was like 7. Oh my God, this is crazy. I'm 21. What is happening? What's going on? So I was actually attending a leadership retreat, and we did a little like icebreaker game of, I really don't know what it's called, but it was basically like we sit in a circle, we all face each other, standing in a circle, and the moderator, whatever, would say something like, I am a first-generation college student. If it applied to you, you step in the circle. So we went through a whole list of things, and then he got to, well, I identify as bisexual, and something literally pushed me in the center of no one pushed me.
Divine.
I stepped, without thinking, I stepped in, and then I remember I started to shake because I was, I'm not gonna say popular. That's kind of stupid, but like I was very like well known on camp. Like I was involved in everything. So I started. I'm like, what did I just do? What is that? Are people looking at me? What does this mean? And then, step back. And then we broke out in small groups. And I was like, what did I do? Like, what does this mean? And we were going to debrief and just talk about how that exercise felt. And like, I just knew, I was like, oh my God, people are going to like question me. Like, Sharmaine, really? Like, what? You're bisexual? Like, that's very interesting. Yeah, no one did that. No one did that. And I was like, that's cool because I don't know what that means. Like, I really don't know. I don't know what I did. I don't know what this means for me. I don't know. So I was like literally having a freak out. And this was probably the start of my quarter life crisis, because I'm not going to lie, like that was the beginning of a very, very long depressive period. So after that, we broke away. I called my mother because I was just like, okay, I just did that. And really the only person that I was most concerned about was my mom. I'm like, we had developed a very close relationship when I was away at school. Like, that doesn't just happen overnight. Like that was, time.
Yeah.
So I have to tell her, like, this is going to be a thing. So I called her on the phone. I was like, hey mom. And she's like, hey, what's going on? I was like, oh shit. And I was like, I just want you to know that I'm bisexual. And she's like, okay, well, I mean, and she didn't say anything. I was like, that means I like boys and girls. and so she was like, well, I mean, I kind of figured, I was kind of preparing for whoever you were going to bring home, like, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was the cover. And then we just kind of continued like a normal conversation, and that was it. And I was just like, oh, well, she took that kind of well. This is very interesting. This is very interesting. And then now that I did that, and you know, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to go from there because that was my last semester in school. I didn't really have. It's ironic. I'm like, I went to school in San Francisco. Okay.
Whoa.
Right? Okay. So, and like I had a whole huge core of friends, and I'm like, who can I talk? Like, who is in the community that I can talk to? Like, how have I not like made really close ties with like any gay people? What is happening? Like, this is crazy. But like I knew of people, but not close enough to like have a conversation. So it was a whole thing. And started going to therapy, and then the therapist said something crazy, and then I didn't go back. It was a whole thing. So anyway, had a breakdown, barely graduated, I was like, I gotta get out of here. Like, anyway, moved back home. It wasn't a thing. I didn't really, like, dating wasn't a priority. None of that was a priority because I'm like, I graduated school, I gotta find a job. Like, you know. And then the recession hit, but that's a whole other separate story. So this is turning out to be a really long story. I'm sorry.
This is wonderful.
No, it was a really, really tough road. And I would say that I really didn't come into my own. So also bisexual was so not accurate because I was like, yeah, no. Like, I love you men, but no. Yeah, that was like a half truth I told myself. I was like, yeah, boo-boo, you are all the way on the other side. Like, let's be real. Let's be honest about that. Like, okay, self-acceptance, boo-boo, you can't lie to yourself. Like, you gotta come all the way out. Okay. So I didn't really need to come out against my mother because she already knew like it was a thing. And yeah, it was just kind of easier just like, yeah, just women, really, just just the ladies. The L word helped with that, like I said.
The L word helped with that. Oh yes.
Like, yeah. Yeah. And the funny thing is, my mother was watching that show before I was. Okay. And she's the one that told me about it. And I'm like,
oh, what?
Okay.
Maybe that was on purpose.
Yeah. You know,
like,
parents
let
know
me help her out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
she definitely helped me out. But I will say it was a process. It was a journey. I struggled quite a bit just trying to find community because I didn't know like
even
how to be gay. Like, what does that mean? I didn't really know, like, you know. And so I totally did the stereotypical things. I totally did. Like, I'm not even gonna front. Like,
did you do a slit in your eyebrows?
That's why you did naturally, honey. Okay.
You were born. You were born.
No, no, like I was like, no more fucking heels. I don't fucking wear heels. No, I never liked, that was part of a role. I never liked doing that anyway. So I was just like, yeah, no. No more dresses. Why do we even own these? Like, this is crazy. And cut the hair. I was like I'm keep getting hit on by men. Yeah, no. So like, cut this. Like, maybe that might help. I don't know. You know, I was just like, flannel. That's like the lesbian like jersey. Let me get some flat. Like, I totally did. I did. I'm not gonna front. I did the stereotype. I didn't know. I didn't have like. I didn't have a fairy lesbian godmother to guide me.
Right.
I wish I did.
Yes. No, I totally understand.
It was a struggle, but I wouldn't say, I would say I really, really fell into my skin and fell into my own in my late 20s. Like, that's when it really kind of like 28, 29, 30. Definitely now I'm 35. I'm like, okay. So it, you know, very different story. Ups and downs, of course.
Right.
And partly the late 20s is because I'm like, well, I should probably learn how to date at some point in my life. Like, this is weird. So went through the ups and downs of that journey. I'm like crying like a 12-year-old. What is this? What are these feelings? Like, what's right now? Like, you should love me. I don't understand. But yeah, so learning all of that, going through all those ups and downs, and I look back, I'm like, oh, Sharmaine, oh, boo-boo. I mean, yeah, you really should have did some research.
We all did that.
I know. But I can look back and laugh now, but going through it, I'm like, this is hard. This is hard.
So,
but, you know, God is guiding me. God will send me my twin flame. So,
yes. Yeah. Really, it's I look back, like you said, guidance. It really was breadcrumbs. You know, even being here in the US is I was just following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
I had no idea what that was, but that was God's hand in that too. You know. Yeah. It really. Yeah.
It's a beautifully scary, funny, happy, sad, devastating, like shame, getting over shame, self-love, self-compassion, grace. Oh
my God, grace.
And forgiveness. All of it. All of it.
Yeah.
You know,
makes for a great movie.
Yeah. Well, you know. No.
Hey, I want to put it down though. I feel like all these stories are so powerful that we're sharing with each other. Like, it really is a very human thing, and all those experiences that you had, like range, it uplifts me when I hear your story. It uplifted me, and I open mind up when I hear your story, because I had a different experience. You know, I didn't realize that there was this. I was identify as something, and then I realized I'm something else, and it for me was just one jump. So it really is a beautiful tapestry of events and people and experiences that it would make a wonderful documentary.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are lots of
We'll see where all of this takes us. And I want to make sure that I give you guys some time, because I know that you do have some projects that you might have in the works, maybe. Do you want to share? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just, I guess both of us had always wanted to do something similar to this, but we just didn't have the other person who had the same vision. And so separately, before we even knew each other, I mean, I always thought like, oh, I would love to have an impact on the communities. And I started getting involved with certain LGBT centers and just a little bit here and there. And then you were doing similar,
I was all into my spirituality. So I was all I would love to have a Super Soul Sunday brunch club.
Right.
And just watch together and have a discussion afterwards and just stuff like that. And I had those ideas, but it just never took off. And, the doubts, as you say, but and then you kind of combine the two. And I'm like, wow, that would be really cool to be able to, serve the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just said, you were just lacking a millennial in your life. I think you needed it.
So the technology thing, man.
Right. I didn't realize how out of touch I was until I was like, what am I doing? But I mean, what is all of this? Because I remember MySpace, honey.
Yeah.
Okay? And the other day, I was like, let me say a prayer for MySpace Tom, because we don't know where he is, okay? We don't know where he is. So, and now we have all of this, which is, it's been amazing in the time of COVID, right? Just
For sure.
staying connected with people, you know, learning new things like education and learning and different courses and classes and just everything has now moved online, and it's made it a little bit more accessible for people,
Right.
which is super cool.
Right.
I think that's fantastic. But I'm sorry,
right now we've been doing a little bit here and there with our Instagram. We have our YouTube channel set up, and then we have our podcast art. We just have to make podcasts.
It's really hard with everything that's going on. And
it's been just so busy for us. So we were like so excited when you reached out to us, because we're like, oh, we have to turn up.
right. No, I love it, and this conversation has been absolutely fantastic. So I will make sure to post your YouTube, your Instagram, and your podcast information. I'll post it in the, you guys, it'll be in the not comments, or the description of this video. So it'll be on there, so they can make sure to stay connected with Sam and Aussie, Saussie, keep it saucy. I love it. I will definitely make sure everyone's connected to that. Before we end, I do want one final question, just to leave it for the masses, leave it for, someone that might be watching, that might be going through something similar, in a similar boat, or, just anything. So what is one thing that you would tell your younger self that you think would have helped along your journey, spiritual or sexual, just your overall journey?
I think the best advice that I ever could have given myself, whether it was back then or even a year ago or even a week ago, is just that, keep being who you are, and, don't let other people tell you who to be, because they have their own life to live. So they, it shouldn't be about trying to just appease everybody, because it's really not going to make you happy. Right. And, as tough as things may get, or in those moments where you feel like you're entirely alone, just know that everything is happening for a reason, and it serves its purpose. And it may be 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, but one day you will understand why it happened. And so you can learn to appreciate all of your experiences as they happen.
Beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. I there's a phrase that I keep coming back to in Greek. It's know thyself, and at its core for me, that was when I realized who I was, that's when everything made sense and everything opened up for me. So it's all about you. This is your life. Get to know yourself, get to be comfortable in your skin, be who you are, and everything will fall into place despite whatever is you're experiencing. And like Sam said, the challenges, the hardships that you might go through, it is there for a reason, and you may not see it, the benefit of that now, but trust me, you will.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is amazing. The one thing that I keep thinking about, and I always go back to, is love. Love is at the heart. At the heart. It's at the core of everything. And I know for me, that has been,
we both have our hearts.
That is amazing. That is amazing. It's really at the root of everything. Anything and everything that is good. It is from a place of love. And I feel that in my soul. I feel that every day that I get to be here on this planet and I get to experience life. I feel that in my interactions with other people. that is one of the biggest epiphanies that I've experienced is falling in love with myself. Everything fell into place. Peace, balance, alignment, all of it fell into place once I really, really, really fell in love with myself. So that's what I want to leave you with. And I just thank you for this wonderful conversation. You just laughed. It's like 30 minutes of laughter. I love it. It's like our happy hour Zoom call.
Yes.
There's no music. We're not dancing, but maybe I'll some music.
My heart is so full, Sharmaine. Thank you so much.
Mine is too. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for being so lovely and so honest and so real with me. I truly, truly am grateful for having you here, and thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you for sharing yourself on this channel.
Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too. You guys take care.